Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Blue Bounty Hunter channel. And we all know about the event of Qui-Gon's death that had a huge impact on the galaxy, including the growth of Anakin as a Jedi. So now imagine Master Qui-Gon surviving and then fighting alongside his old master and friend Dooku on his quest to save the galaxy from corruption. In this video, I'll explore how this affects all events leading up and into the Clone Wars itself, including how the duel on Geonosis would go between the two sets of Force users.
This is not going to go the way you think.
The laser fields of the Theed power generator flicker as the combatants of the ongoing duel maintain their positions. Qui-Gon is currently meditating in preparation for the next blur of fighting.
You are a fool, Jedi, and you will soon feel the heat of my blade as I gut you across this hall.
Qui-Gon says nothing in response and continues to concentrate, but just then the walls flicker as one by one the doors give way, allowing Jin to charge forward with a new burst of energy. At the same time, Maul excitedly leaps forward to finish his kill. The Sith spins his saber staff back and forth as the Jedi aims for simple yet effective strikes on both blades of the weapon. Meanwhile, Kenobi sprints up the aisle just to be halted by the very last energy field separating him from his master. Tensions rise in the room as Qui-Gon must take multiple pauses as he grows tired from Maul's attacks, which concludes with a massive push from Maul, which briefly stuns Qui-Gon, but just as his blade is coming down, Obi-Wan lashes out with the Force, briefly stopping Maul's arms from crescendoing down. Then Qui-Gon backflips while kicking Maul's staff from his hands onto the ground below. And at the same instant, Obi-Wan's laser field comes down with the rest behind it, allowing him to also enter the fray. Maul force pulls his lightsaber to him, but on its way, Qui-Gon cuts the hilt in half. Darth Maul quickly throws the broken half of his saber at Obi-Wan, which briefly blinds the Jedi when the saber passes by his face. But then after sparring again with the Sith, Qui-Gon tricks Maul by spinning his lightsaber under Maul's hands before cutting them off, and he then quickly shoves his lightsaber through the shocked Sith, who gasps for air. It's impossible. Then Maul falls straight back into the pit, and he hits his head against the wall, destroying the last little glimmer of the life he had left in him.
Master, are you alright? Yes, thank you everyone. But we must now report back to Coruscant. I hear my old master wishes to speak with me again.
With this, the two depart and head for the nearest Republic ship to exit the planet. And oh yeah, in this version, the Jedi just don't have time for the victory parade because they need one of those good Jedi nap times at the temple, so yeah. After an infuriating meeting with the Council in which they not only discussed the events of the Battle of Naboo, but also the uncertain future of Anakin, Qui-Gon could be seen on his way to the Works, which was an industrial zone in Coruscant that was avoided due to the high crime rates. As his transport ship drops him off, Jin still finds his thoughts dwelling on how the Council still fails to make a decision as to who will train and if Anakin will even be trained in the first place. But the Jedi then remembers to calm himself and concentrate on his current environment, which just so happens to be a room containing the extremist Jedi known as Dooku.
An interesting place to meet, isn't this?
Indeed. But this is after all a very important meeting, Qui-Gon. We're here to discuss the future of the galaxy.
Does this involve the unusual amount of time you spent in the archives recently?
Just another part of a large scheme me and my, master have been working on. Now, Qui-Gon, I know this will be a thorough adjustment for your ideals, but I'm sure a man as wise as you can see to the truth.
Please elaborate.
Well, by the end of this rotation, I plan to leave the Jedi Order, and I'd like to ask you to come with me.
This doesn't sound like the Dooku I know.
Allow me to explain. Let me ask you if you've noticed the Jedi slowly moving further and further from what's right and true for the galaxy and the Force, and have become more centered around their sacred code and treating the Council like a group of idolized gods, which among instances like the hesitation to that slave boy of yours
you've recently discovered has all been a part of more and more corruption. As much as I hate to admit it, I have noticed a continuous thread of growing control from the Council. They seem to lack the passion to truly protect this universe. Exactly. And as radical as this may seem at first, my plan is to leave the Jedi, leave the Republic, and then begin a mission around the galaxy to start a new movement of freedom that is not tied to weightless laws of peace and the light side of the Force, but instead completely based on morals and logic. I'm willing to help you in this venture, Master, but first I must inform Obi-Wan of my decision. No one can be told of this, my friend, as the Jedi will only interfere further. Even though I already fear I've asked too much of you, this night I must now ask you to welcome my supporter, Lord Sidious. A mysterious figure cloaked in black approaches. Qui-Gon senses an impressive amount of Force energy radiating from him, but he can't tell if it's light or dark, as if it's shrouded somehow. If you're confused about my Force presence, then I must remind you that, like Dooku said, this movement must be kept a secret. I understand, Master. Good, then follow me. It's time to bring a new era to the galaxy, but one that also requires a significant amount of planning. We're only doing this to keep the balance, my old friend. You must understand. Yes, Master, I suppose I do. And one more thing. You will no longer be advised to call me Master, as we are both equal apprentices to our Lord Sidious now. All a part of the plan, I guess. The trio then continue to walk as they enter a hollow room with multiple different stations dedicated to blueprints, varied planetary treaties, and even prototypes for new lightsaber hilts. As the next decade passes by, Qui-Gon, who was at first led to believe this was just a diplomatic movement into peacefully securing the galaxy to a good state, must slowly come to terms that this is truly a big step for even Jedi like him and Dooku. But alas, over the years, Sidious slowly manipulates Jin with the help of Dooku into the shape of a formidable strategist, and when Sidious announces him and his apprentice as Sith, Qui-Gon isn't even surprised and is in fact ready to take his galactic mission to a new level due to the manipulations of Palpatine over the years. With the Darth at the reins, he uses the two men as apprentices each, with them both being on an equal level. And while this obviously breaks the rule of two, Sidious is actually willing to blur the lines of the Sith code in order for his all-important vision of the galaxy to come to fruition. At some point around 4 years after the events of Episode 1, Dooku, who now is known as Count Dooku of Sereno, and Qui-Gon, who is vaguely known as the Shadow Count of Onderon, both received their Sith lightsabers, with Dooku's being a unique curved hilt, and Qui-Gon's having a rare guard around the base that is very similar to that of Oppo Rancisis. The two also went by the Sith names of Darth Tyrannus and Darth Protego, and were an unstoppable force when it came to strategy and politics throughout the galaxy, with their knack for justice and different philosophies being influential in their work towards starting a separatist movement, which was entirely successful because of the droid forces developed under their rule that numbered almost twice as much as in the original timeline because of the combined efforts of all three Sith. Also, over the years, Dooku taught Qui-Gon more about the art of lightsaber dueling, while the other previous Jedi shared some of his impressive Force knowledge with his brethren. Towards the end of this decade, however, following 32 BBY, the separatist movement truly started to form in the shadows as more and more treaties were signed. In 22 BBY, multiple plots were formed by the two Sith to assassinate Senator Padme Amidala, which after many attempts led the Jedi to start an investigation and protection effort under Jedi Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi, the former apprentice to Qui-Gon. And when Obi-Wan's research led him to the droid factories of Geonosis, he is then captured just before discovering Tyrannus talking to some of his fellow separatist leaders, including Wat Tambor of the Techno Union. But now moving into our next scene, Count Dooku walks through a low, arched doorway crafted by the Geonosians. Geonosians, the same Geonosians that now guard the entrance and halls leading up to Kenobi's prison. As Obi-Wan senses Dooku entering the room, he finds it hard to focus on Dooku from the glare of the sun entering the room that he has now resided in for many days now, like a prisoner in a colony of ants. Also, the blue hue of this containment field made it even more difficult to make out the details of the elder man walking up to him, but as the door shuts behind Dooku, his vision is back, and Kenobi still feels shock at seeing the legendary traitor again. Traitor. Oh, I'm the traitor now. You know, Qui-Gon always spoke very highly of you. If only he were here right now. Qui-Gon Jinn would never join you. If only that were true. Then through the side passage in the wall, which appeared to be nothing more than a crack caused by some kind of earthquake, at first glance revealed the shocking sight of a Sith, Qui-Gon, now robed in a black cloak with red lines and battle-heavy plates underneath. Master, what is this? I'm afraid we have some talking to do, Obi-Wan. You see, over the course of the last decade, me and this traitor here have been doing things that the Jedi could never dream of. He clears his throat as he continues. Unfortunately, we must hold you here, Obi-Wan, as you interfere with our plans for the galaxy. But I really do hate for you to be on the wrong side of the conflict, friend. So I'll ask you this. Join us and bring a new and secure, justified reign to the galaxy, or stay in a corrupt faction that isn't powerful enough to even protect their own senators, and is at the same time being controlled like a puppet by the dark side of the Sith, known as Darth Sidious. Dooku really has gotten to your head. While I never thought it would come to this, Master, I must take a stand against you and your accomplice. After all, Sith Lords are my speciality. Well, I see where your sense of humor rubbed off onto, Lord Jin. But with that said, we must depart this young fool and be on our way. Agreed. I hate to inform that you will die with the rest of Republic, my old friend. You really were the best of us, Master. Qui-Gon briefly looks back as if considering what Obi-Wan has just said, but then continues to walk forward. After this meeting, these events would come as follows. Obi-Wan's distress message would be sent out to the rest of the Jedi. Anakin and Padme would try and fail to rescue Obi-Wan from Geonosis, leading to their capture, and Yoda would then travel to Kamino to acquire the clone forces for the upcoming battle. Next up, a Jedi strike team is sent to Geonosis to rescue all of the prisoners lying there, leading to a large fight in the Patronki arena. And in this timeline, when Jango Fett goes to chase after Mace Windu after he first appears, the thoughtful Qui-Gon Jinn places a hand on his shoulder, advising him to make smarter choices. Then after the clones arrive to reinforce the Jedi, the Battle of Geonosis will commence, leading to a chase over the sand dunes and rocky formations of the Outer Rim planets, as Count Dooku and the Shadow Count of Onderon make their way on personalized speeder bikes, each while Jango Fett flies close behind using his jetpack. Following close behind that is the LAAT gunship of Anakin and Obi-Wan, who rapidly fire lasers at the trio's rear. The previously quiet hangar of Dooku's is now filled with the screeching hum of the incoming speeders, ships, and bounty hunters. As laser fire tears at the rears of the opponents, Dooku and Qui-Gon crash their speeders onto the platform, both flipping up and over as the vehicles careen off into the abyss below. Then shortly after, Fett lands right behind them as the LAAT gunship flies closer. But then, with an unexpected betrayal, Darth Tyrannus and Darth Protego share a look before both igniting forced lightning out of their fingertips right at Jango Fett, which with the combined strength is enough to erupt Jango into flames. Then, as the bounty hunter is screaming in agony, the two force push the burning man into the LAAT engine, causing the entire ship to explode. Luckily, at the last minute, however, Anakin and Obi-Wan are able to leap onto the same platform as the two Sith, with all four of them now standing in anticipation for the oncoming duel. And if you're wondering, did he really just do that? Yes,
Yes, I did, because honestly, I like to have fun with these what ifs, and while it might be over the top, who's to say throwing a flaming bounty hunter through a gunship is out of question for the Sith anyway. How sad that it has come to this, my friends. You're murderous snakes that would kill your own partner just for your stupid vision. Oh, but you see, that's where you're no different. For if we had allowed Django to defend us from you, I'm sure you would have cut through him all the same, like the hypocrites you are. Nevertheless, you should stand down before we have to fight each other. Think about it. We are all friends here, masters of masters of masters. Why must we fight when we could unite together to destroy the already huge mess you have created? Unfortunately, Obi-Wan, if the galaxy doesn't want to fix itself, then we must do it for them. And that is why, if you stand in our way, you shall perish too. With this, the graying man turns on his red lightsaber in sync with Darth Protego, with the two assuming their unique stances of forms 2 and 4. Then Anakin and Obi-Wan turn on their green and blue lightsabers they got from the sands of the Petronki arena. All four collide on the open area of the hangar area, which is different than what is originally seen in the movie, and this proves an intense fight due to the extreme connections between each of the duelists, and also the strong teamwork implemented by each side. As the fight continues, the four move their way into the darker depths of the hangar as the bright light of the sun is blocked out. Anakin fights in an aggressive and brash style as Obi-Wan does his best to not only send powerful strikes into the fray, but also protect his naive apprentice. Dooku and Qui-Gon, on the other hand, have an extremely developed and deadly form of sophisticated fighting that allows them to not only work well together, but also provide a strong threat to the two Jedi. The room is filled with red, blue, and even green light between the intense flurry of choreography. Anakin and Obi-Wan do their best to split up the pair of enemies as they've been taught, but are continually confused by the unorthodox methods of the Sith, leading to many unique moves from Tyrannus as he spins his lightsaber behind his back and then continues to deflect the blows of the others. Obi-Wan finds it hard to believe someone as senior as Dooku is such an exceptional duelist and still doesn't seem to let up in the fight, even after minutes upon minutes of back and forth aggression. After another fast-paced burst of hits, however, Anakin manages to send a lightsaber strike up Qui-Gon's back, not dissimilar to that of Kylo Ren on Finn in The Force Awakens. Even though this sends the Shadow Count reeling back as he must regain his breath, Dooku defends him by powerfully force-pushing Obi-Wan away and then briefly fighting Anakin 1v1. Then Qui-Gon gets back up, and while Anakin is distracted with Tyrannus, manages to slice through the boy's side, which proves to be just a mere cut, but still enough to exhaust Anakin even more. But then, out of the blue, Obi-Wan leaps back into the mix, kicking both Sith onto the floor simultaneously before somersaulting across the battlefield. But before Kenobi can even try to make negotiations, however, Qui-Gon rolls behind Obi-Wan and then flicks up his lightsaber to stab his once apprentice through the back. No! The young Jedi tries to run up to his master, but is intercepted by Dooku, who fends off the aggressor. Qui-Gon then pulls his blade back out of Obi-Wan, which causes the frail man to kneel to the ground. Then Darth Protego uses the Force to lift a pillar from the ceiling to hover over Obi-Wan. It should never have come to this, but you leave me no choice. With this, the Sith releases the pillar onto Obi-Wan, leaving Qui-Gon with a last mental image in his head of a shocked Obi-Wan with tears in his eyes. Anakin then tries to kick Dooku away in order to get to Qui-Gon, but is stopped by a huge wave of Force lightning from both Dooku and Jin alike that makes Anakin crumple down in pain before being thrown into and off of a nearby wall onto the ground defeated. Then the two Sith run up the ramp of their Punwarka ship to retreat from the battle, not wanting to also end the life of Obi-Wan's apprentice. After this event, a funeral would be held for Obi-Wan,
Anakin would be made a knight for his heroic acts on Geonosis, and Dooku as well as Qui-Gon would report back to Sidious for further instruction for the upcoming days. Soon after, the Clone Wars would be underway, with the CIS providing as an even bigger threat than in the original timeline because of the combined war efforts of Darth Tyrannus and Darth Protego. Also, because of these two powerful Sith working together, General Grievous would never be necessary for the conflict, and neither would be the trained assassins like Ventress or Savage. In this reality, the Counts would achieve great victories at the Second Battle of Geonosis, as well as the battles of Christophsis, Umbara, and even Onderon, where the Shadow Count often resided, which meant that by what would originally be the end of the war in 19 BBY would now still be a stalemate as the Outer Rim sieges went underway. This would cause Palpatine to take funds out of the Separatists in order to create a Phase 3 variant of clone troopers with strong armor crafted from the Zillo Beast hide that increased the Republic's military strength. Lastly, Anakin would take on an oath of revenge to kill Qui-Gon, and especially Dooku, who held him back from his master's death, which would turn him into one of the strongest and most aggressive Jedi in the war. So that's the end of this lengthy what if. I hope you liked it, and I hope it didn't get too drawn out like it kind of feels like to me, but I'll be making a part 2 to this video soon that will continue the story of Qui-Gon and Dooku, and also go over how the Battle of Coruscant would change in this timeline. But anyway, that's it for this video. You can subscribe if you want to.
Oh, I don't think so.
I upload every Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I also post shorts on Saturday. But yeah, see ya. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Blue Bounty Hunter channel. And remember that scene from Revenge of the Sith with that duel between Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Dooku? Well, now randomly throw a Sith version of Qui-Gon in there that is fighting alongside his once master, now Sith brethren, and you have our situation for today. Oh, and in case you didn't watch part 1, spoilers, because we're also going to have to remove Obi-Wan from the premises as he had some minor flesh wounds in the last video. The near atmosphere of Coruscant was filled with sounds of ARC-170s zipping past, high-pitched trills of vulture droids, and also the massive movement of the Venator and Munificent capital ships alike. Welcome to the Battle of Coruscant. But above all of these electronic audios comes the distant echo of a Jedi's Eta II interceptor with yellow markings with a large red stripe down the middle, which of course belongs to the vengeful Anakin Skywalker. You see, ever since his master's death at the hands of Darth Protego, or Qui-Gon, in the halls of Geonosis, the young Jedi has been on an oath to kill the two Sith, including of course Darth Tyrannus. This time, with no Obi-Wan to accompany him, Anakin just blows straight through the shields of the hangar with his cannons, and then braces before his starfighter crashes into the surface of the area. The Jedi leaps out of his vehicle as it rolls over and over, and then consequently explodes behind him, allowing Anakin to flip up and dive into a swarm of battle droids, cutting through them like a maniac with a lightsaber. The foes stand no chance to Skywalker as his blade swirls around his shoulders, and then after he is finished with the first batch, a second enters the room from the far entrance. Anakin's response to this is of course to pull out all of the buzz droids from the closest droid tri-fighter, and then throw them at the group before exploding all of them like a bunch of grenades. As Skywalker walks out towards the elevator, he must use the Force to push back some of the shrapnel coming towards him. Next up, Anakin goes up the elevator to the top of the invisible hand, where he knows the Sith, and therefore Chancellor he has been assigned to save, are residing. Dooku and Jin stare out at the surface of the city planet they once called home as multiple dogfighters zoom past. This moment is interrupted by the sound of a door opening behind them. After turning around and walking past the captured Chancellor, who they secretly know to be Darth Sidious, the two Sith take in the sight of Anakin Skywalker, who has adopted the look of a merciless warrior with a ripped tunic and hair completely shaved other than the single braid in the back.
Is it that time already? Yes, I think it must be. Time for a duel. The last duel between us and this boy.
Don't worry, old man. It'll all be over soon.
Oh yes, I imagine this would have been a simple confrontation if circumstances were different. You know, we stand here menacingly in a big throne room and young angry Jedi that thinks he's impressing anyone but his prick of a wife rushes in to meet us. But it would appear we have something here that you want.
Darth Protego then turns on his red lightsaber right in front of Palpatine, which starts to sizzle the hairs on the Elder's face. Then Skywalker throws his hooded cloak back and he flips over the railing with one hand and then ignites his own lightsaber. And hate to interrupt, but is it just me or would it hurt pretty bad to keep jumping off all of these platforms and stuff? I mean, it can be good on the knees, and don't even get me started on that time Padme jumped like 20 feet and landed with no problem. I'm still convinced she must have been a Jedi for pulling that off. Stand back. If you want to end anyone's life, it'll be through a lightsaber fight.
Call me what you like, but one thing I am is a man of honor. I say we fight Lord Protego. Interesting. Leave ourselves exposed and let Anakin to the hostage? Well, I suppose he should be light work anyway, so let's see to it.
Ah! The three converge into battle as the blue lightsaber aggressively fends off the two of opposing color. Back and forth goes the duel between the three as Tyrannus again uses his expert swordsman skills to batter Anakin further and further back, which alongside the occasional bursts of lightning from Qui-Gon that are now blocked by a more experienced Anakin, provide for a considerable threat for the Jedi. The three fight up onto the stair area where Dooku spins around Anakin's back with his lightsaber and then kicks the man up towards the ceiling, who in turn kickflips up and then kicks Darth Tyrannus onto the platform below, continuing his lightsaber contest with Protego. The two make their way down the other side of the stairwell before Dooku lunges forward to meet the two, similar to Sidious's leap in Revenge of the Sith. After another brief spur of hits, however, Anakin lightly slashes Darth Protego across the back before force pushing him all the way over to the far window, where he falls into a small indent in the ground. Then Anakin kicks Tyrannus back before cutting through the one hand holding his lightsaber. Dooku falls to the ground in shock, looking up at his missing limb, which is followed by Anakin force pulling his red lightsaber to him to put Dooku in a lock. Palpatine, sensing the power of this young warrior, stands up and schemes how he will allow Anakin to kill Dooku before the two of them, side by side, Sidious and Vader, will take on Qui-Gon with ease. Good, Anakin. You have defeated your enabler. Now imagine how all of those years of brutal backlash from the Council and limited guidance from your deceased master could have changed if this man had just not held you back during that duel all those years prior. Anakin thinks about this as his pupils go up in hatred, and he starts to concentrate and force his blades closer to the neck of the Count. Yes, it is time, sir. Please, no need for pleasantries. Call me Master. Now make the move, dismember this fiend, and let us be on with our day. Qui-Gon now realizes that it has been Sidious who has manipulated them all these years. Sidious who has taken his life from him, and now he plans to end their lives after their long dedication to his cause. I disagree. He then leaps up with as much power and stealth as a man of his age can muster, but Sidious does his best to pull him back. However, Darth Protego uses this reverse momentum to force pull his own lightsaber, which was lying on the ground next to Skywalker, through the heart of the Jedi, letting it turn on midway to cause maximum damage. Anakin stands there gasping for air. No. Then he slumps over to the ground with both of his sabers turned off and lies there dead. Then Qui-Gon uses the Force to pull the corpse's robot arm off of him, and he then rips the hand and forearm onto Dooku's severed appendage, who then gets up and ignites his own curved hilt. The two turn around to face Sidious, their own master. As the Emperor's anger rises in the room, so does the temperature as he rises up, levitating in the air, and then his black cloak is bestowed upon his back, lifting the hood over his dark glare. You scum have ruined my plans. Now until I can find a stronger apprentice, you must suffer! He then sends the largest storm of Force lightning at the two ever recorded in recent history, causing the lesser Sith to fly back into opposite sides of the room. Then they get up, share a look, and both lift display screens from across the room to bash into the dark Sith, knocking him from his possessed state. I'm not exactly sure if these would count as display screens, but basically it's just these interesting objects here that are also seen in Palpatine's throne room in Return of the Jedi. If you wish to die by blade instead, fools, then so be it. Palpatine then pulls out his two blades before immediately locking in combat with his targets, driving them far back into the facility. While the opposers fight in a very controlled and elegant yet powerful style, Sidious is truly another creature altogether, since he flips back and forth, spinning his sabers like a madman, edging the strength of his prey piece by piece. While this fight is quite similar to that of Savage, Maul, and Sidious during the Clone Wars, it would not be nearly as easy for Palpatine, as these were arguably more experienced opponents that both held their own despite their old age. Then, as always with their excellent teamwork, Dooku and Qui-Gon both shoot out their own Force lightning at Palpatine, who would respond by blocking each stream with his own massive wave of bolts, which causes the three to lock in a struggle of Force lightning, shooting both ways and meeting in the middle. I mean, this really does remind me of another series with two opponents meeting streams of energy in the middle. I just can't quite put my finger on it. Nah, I don't really know, but well, it doesn't matter anyway, since this channel is 100% Star Wars when you look at it. With this final confrontation, however, the entire room is lit with the blue energy of kinetic force, but then randomly, Qui-Gon stops his lightning, which causes Sidious to stumble, and then Protego rolls across the ground, spins around Palpatine, and then cuts through his torso with his own two blades. Sidious isn't even allowed to take in his own defeat before the lightning of Count Dooku, which is still going on at this point, crashes into the old man, making him fly back across the room, and he then smashes into the glass, cracking it before falling onto the ground below in two pieces. Let's finish this. Move over to that control panel there and turn on the heavy armored seal to close us off. Got it. Then Darth Protego lifts the remnants of Sidious's body and throws them through the window into the vacuum of space to ensure his death. Then, as instructed, Tyrannus quickly flips the controls, protecting Qui-Gon and him from the now forgotten danger of space warfare. Moving on to our epilogue, after this catastrophic event, but quite successful from the perspective of our main characters, the overwhelming Separatist forces would overpower the Republic at Coruscant due to the already great war efforts from the previous three Sith, but also the lack of General Kenobi's help in the space battle, which was a big strategic help in the original battle. And the Darths Tyrannus and Protego would crash the Invisible Hand capital ship into the Jedi Temple, leaving little to no survivors. While this is happening, the two would escape via the escape pods on board as the entire city planet is invaded and then conquered by the Separatist forces. The CIS would later win the war after an additional 3.5 years, making the entire Clone Wars 7 years long after all is said and done. The Battle of Coruscant would serve as a turning point in the war, similar to that of the Battle of Endor during the original Galactic Civil War. With this major victory, Dooku and Qui-Gon would create a separatist democracy around the galaxy, with the Empire of course never existing. And while coming from the rough origins, this reign would one day prove to be actually more peaceful than the Republic from years prior, since there would be more freedom and less control over the individual systems allowing for a more monitored yet independent galaxy overall. Dooku and Qui-Gon would live out their remaining years as great counts to this rule. So that's the end of this what if story. It's been a wild ride, and I understand that this part was significantly shorter than part 1, but I think we already covered a lot of stuff, and there really wasn't too many places to go from here that wouldn't just draw out the story too much. And also there's the fact that I'm going to be moving towards making 2 videos every week this summer instead of just 1 like I usually do, because I will have more time now that I'm out of school, so therefore the videos might be slightly shorter just so that I can fit 2 in, but we should be looking at about 10 to 13 minutes on average. But anyway, that's it for this video. You can subscribe if you want to.
Does that mean I can go? Huh?
I upload every Friday and sometimes on Sunday too at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, I post shorts on Saturday, but yeah, see ya. Darth Sidious easily killed 3 Jedi in his office in seconds, so what's to stop him from doing the same to 12 different Jedi on the Council? And while in this fight, in episode 3, he had to call on Force speed to defeat the Masters, who knows what old Sith powers he will pull out of his sleeve for this one, but whatever it is, join me as I recall how each confrontation goes, proving which Jedi will survive the longest, and if Palpatine will survive at all. So if you're a big Star Wars fan and you know this scene very well, then this video should be very cool for you, and if you have no clue what I'm talking about so far in the intro, then well, just sit back and enjoy a story, because that's basically all this is. On Coruscant, the Jedi Council, which had just gotten back from their respective planets after the abrupt end to the Clone Wars, were here to discuss what to do with the ever-growing clone army as the early afternoon traffic of speeders passed around their spire. But then, just as the conversation starts to get heated, they hear the chime and buzz of the elevator leading up to the chamber. The group find themselves slowly quieting down as the doors get ready to open, but when they do, a blasphemous sight is met of the Chancellor Palpatine standing in the elevator. Chancellor, surely you haven't forgotten that this area of the temple is off limits to senators. You're out of your element this time. Oh, I think you'll find this to be one of many surprises today, Master Jedi. He then walks forward slowly.
We were just talking about how now that the war is over, there is no reason for you to be keeping your emergency powers.
Yeah, about that. Then Darth Sidious pulls out 2 red lightsabers, turning the blades on and holding them at his sides. You Jedi are becoming too powerful for your own good. My last step into Emperor of the Galaxy is to eliminate you just like I eliminated the last pests of the CIS. After this afternoon, all clone units will destroy the Republic, and also Anakin is heading here now to finish whatever is left. In response, the Masters start to stand up and ignite their own swords, ranging from blue to green to even purple.
A grave mistake you were making. Turn back now, you still can.
Answer this riddle. Slowly but surely, the Jedi walk towards Palpatine, edging their way forwards and closing a tight ring around him. The tension in the Force is immense in all corners of the room, and Palpatine's eyes dart from master to master, allowing him to plan his exact moves. A Jedi exhales, another feels sweat drip down from his brow, and all the while, Palpatine digs his feet into the floor, ready to pounce. Then, Sidious sends a huge Force scream in the direction of the most deadly Jedi on the side of the room with Yoda, Mace, and Plo. As these Jedi are stunned and blinded momentarily, in the same second, Palpatine spins around and kicks a few of the Jedi back before cutting through Coleman Kaj with both of his lightsabers, and then he darts over to Agen Kohler, and after trading a single blow with his lightsaber, Palpatine cuts through his torso, and then as Kohler kneels to the ground, Sidious dismembers his legs, making him fall to the floor dead. Then, in this same blink and you'll miss it moment, Palpatine flips over to Stas Ali, who is just pulling up her lightsaber to protect herself from the monster in the room, and he cuts through her throat with his lightsaber before force pushing her out of the window. before force pushing her out of the window into oblivion below. Then, with 3 of the 11 Jedi out of the way, and with Anakin also arriving to the district shortly, Sidious focuses all of his strength into trimming down the other 8 Jedi that are currently around him. At this same time, Mace and the other dazed Jedi look back up to discover 3 Jedi bodies that seconds ago were their friends surrounding Palpatine. And then, as all 8 of them rush Palpatine to engage in combat, he meets this quantiful attack by spinning his own lightsaber blades in a way that looks just like General Grievous on Utapau and causes no hits to get close to his core. At one point, Yoda runs along the side of one of the windows as Palpatine's frenzy follows him like a chainsaw. So to answer the question of how he would block so many attacks from all these different Jedi Masters, basically, Palpatine just calls on every skill he knows, but then Mace feels from Palp's dark side and grabs for his wrist at just the right moment, which stops Sidious, and then Mace lets go and kicks him into the elevator before the Jedi charge in and start to battle with him in an elevator fight scene type battle. As the lift descends down the central spire, Palpatine spins his blade behind his back, holding off Plo and Mundi before force choking half of the Jedi, including Mace, and knocking over the other half with the dark side right afterwards. As the elevator nears the bottom and starts to click into place, Kit Fisto helps force push Obi-Wan above Palpatine, who then kicks down and knocks the lightsaber out of his hand, giving the rest an opportunity to finish him off. But Darth Sidious uses a force illusion, which is a dark side power, to create a double of himself that then turns on its own lightsaber. Then Palpatine dissipates this illusion and turns back on his own 2 lightsabers, spinning them around him as he and the group of Jedi exit the door of the elevator onto a lower level of the temple. One of the lowest, to be exact. So for reference, they would now be in an area similar to what we see during Order 66, when there's a bunch of clones shooting at the Jedi in the temple. Mace cuts one of Sidious's hilts out of his hand, which leaves the Dark Lord with 1 red blade that he is of course also skilled heavily at, as we see in Revenge of the Sith. But then as the elevator shaft across from the one they used to come down is full with another lift, speeding down the tracks in plain view of the group, Palpatine grabs Ki-Adi-Mundi with the Force and then pushes him into the moving elevator, which disintegrates the Syrian Jedi right after he yells, and right before Sidious turns around and twirls back into combat yet again. Then as the great halls of the temple are filled with a swarm of Jedi pushed back by Palpatine, they get further and further away from the spire where they first started fighting. But it seems Sidious would think that that central tower is too far away, because shortly after he used the Force to lift the entire spire and then crash it through the layers of building into 3 of the 7 Jedi still fighting, meaning that Obi-Wan, Saesee Tiin, and Shaak Ti, who were standing in front of Sidious, are crushed out of existence without hesitation. Then as the huge broken spire pressures the ground around them, causing cracks all over the place, Palpatine lifts up another huge spire, preparing to take out the remaining 4 Jedi. But as he flings it through the roof towards them, they all manage to dodge out of the way, meaning the spire misses and goes straight through the wall of the temple, leaving a massive opening to the outside with whatever the Coruscant version of cinder block debris is lying about. Then as the bunch is recovering, 2 random Jedi, disturbed by the commotion, run up to deal with Palpatine, who flings the 2 weak fools into a nearby pillar, destroying them. Kit Fisto then gets up and runs forward to take on Palpatine, who sends Force Lightning to throw the Nautolan Jedi into the sky before he explodes. Then after unleashing a massive string of Force Lightning, Palpatine moves to the outside of the temple, where their fight continues with just Plo Koon, Mace Windu, and Yoda, where he tries to thin out to the crowd even more. So yeah, I get that there would be a bunch of random Jedi all around the temple, and you might be asking, why isn't this video like Palpatine versus 1,000 Jedi? And I'm sure that would make a cool video, like maybe the entire arena battle scene, but it's like just Palpatine versus all the Jedi. I don't know that would go too well for him, to be honest, but Basically, the idea here is that all the Jedi are just on lunch break outside or something, besides a couple people, so just go with that. But then he takes on Plo by using the ancient Sith power called Force of Shadow, so that from Plo's view, the sun from the Coruscant system suddenly dims out, leaving the planet in darkness, and with only a few practically street lights in the interior of the opened Jedi Temple, Plo Koon has only his breathing and the hum of his lightsaber to keep company. Other than that, complete darkness. But then, like a shadow with a brief glimpse of red, Sidious moves from in front to under to behind Plo, cutting through the Master who stands no chance against the Soon Emperor. Finally, with just Mace and Yoda, the fight continues even more intense than ever, with all three fighting for the fate of the galaxy, which seems to be hopeless any way the Jedi look at it. Or perhaps that's just the dark side clouding everything. But just as the fight makes its way to the entrance courtyard of the temple, out of nowhere finally arrives the Chosen One, Anakin, in a turned over transport, which he then climbs out of. Then he walks up to the trio fighting to observe and contemplate. "Oh, great, Anakin. Surely now you see that you need me. The Jedi are taking over." "Actually, you told me to report you to the Jedi Council, which I plan to do."
Dead? The council is, you little
Well, I suppose now it just depends on whether you really care about Padme, or if you're willing to break free, push past the limit to achieve true and just power. "My trust in you, Skywalker. Don't forget my trust." Then Palpatine cuts lightly through Mace's lower ribcage, and he then falls over as Palpatine stands there with his robes billowing in the wind, as you can see massive plumes from smoke in the distance behind them. Then as the Sith stands over the two Jedi, there is no wonder the duel is coming to an end. "I know what I have to do. I'm sorry." So naturally, Anakin turns on his lightsaber to make the move and stab through the back of Palpatine, killing the Sith Lord that has been controlling the Separatist, Republic, and more behind the scenes for years, and lied to Anakin about saving his wife, only to come to the temple and kill all of the Jedi. So with a blue blade through his back, Palpatine falls to the 12th Council member, who is now granted the rank of Master. Later, the Jedi would issue a warning throughout the galaxy to all Jedi to return to the temple before the inhibitor chips are activated, which then allows the Jedi and Jedi loyalists, like senators including Padme and Bail Organa, to send a strike team to Kamino and destroy the commands for future clones to be made. So then Palpatine and the clones are defeated, and all background Jedi have also left now, so it's just the main figureheads leading this party, like Mace, Yoda, Anakin. You got all you need. Obi-Wan, admittedly, he's in a little bit of, So this is one of many what ifs I'm going to start pushing out over the next month or so. There's no reason that there's these many what ifs now, it's just that this is kind of the way that the video ideas I had happened to work out in my schedule. But anyway, that's it for this video. You can subscribe if you want to. I upload every Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I also post shorts on Saturday. But yeah, see ya. Jango and Boba, father and son, were the most effective marksmen of the galaxy, and everyone always has the debate of who's more cool, Jango Fett or Boba Fett, clean and controlled or rugged and adaptive. So if the two had to meet on Kamino again when both in their primes, who would end up with the dent in their helmet? Oh, and let's not forget that Jango would have his clones at his side, opposed to his son, who just so happens to be friends with a very certain Sith. Obi-Wan walks out of the room of Jango Fett, and his son Boba being escorted politely by Tan Wei, who waits at the door as the Jedi heads towards his Jedi starfighter to speak with the Jedi Council. Meanwhile, Boba looks up at his father, wondering what to do. "Pack your things, we're leaving." Then as Tan Wei comes back into the room, she words to Jango that should the Jedi try to arrest him on his way out, he is far too great of an asset to lose for the Kaminoans. So she shows Jango as Boba packs up in the closet a highly trained clone of him, which she will deploy with Boba on their mission to Geonosis. This clone gets in the Durasteel armor as Jango agrees, thinking in the best interest of his son having a dad. Then this clone of Jango would fight Obi-Wan before then going to Geonosis, where he is beheaded by Mace Windu. When the real Jango hears this news, he requests to see Boba immediately, but Boba has of course fled the planet and now chosen his own path. So disappointed, Jango is forced by the cloners to go into hiding in the laboratories of Kamino, where he is kept at the age of 44 from their high tech to keep him in prime condition. Because the Kaminoans also really don't want a 60-year-old Jango Fett as a reference for future clones, but 24 years later in 2 ABY, even though the clones have long been forgotten, bringing way to the new stormtroopers, behind the back of Emperor Palpatine, Darth Vader has begun work on a secret clone legion that will serve under him in future searches for the unfound rebel base, which will later be discovered at Hoth, but they do not know this yet. Training these fine soldiers is Boba Fett, a bounty hunter that Vader is now familiar with, who is very much in his prime in only his mid-30s. So I couldn't really tell you the prime age for bounty hunting. I mean, maybe the 30s because you have more experience, but I don't really know. Boba is used for cloning reference and of course blaster training on a secret facility on Kamino located under the water. Then one day Boba is assigned to monitoring one of the lower levels of the base when he stops at a creaking sound up ahead. Moving with caution, the bounty hunter steps forward until he gets to a dark room with tall vats of Kaminoan bacteria surrounding him, giving the room a slight red tint. Then an undetected explosion goes off right next to Boba, which sends him flying back and into the vats, which he bounces off of. When Boba hits the ground, his head is rattling in his helmet as he feels the blood pump into his head again. Then, standing up, he's hit with a man wielding a jetpack who rams Boba into a nearby corner, which sends the two rolling onto the ground. And as the assassin walks up to Boba, he can't make him out as his eyes are still fuzzy, but his infrared visor shows him that it's a Mandalorian of some kind. Then, right as the man pulls out his blaster, Boba activates his jetpack on the floor, which makes him jolt forward, knocking the assassin over. Then, as the enemy flips over onto his back to get up again, Boba shoots his whipcord around him, which keeps him in place, but in response, the man breaks out with his vibroblades before they both point blasters at each other, causing a stalemate. As Boba's vision comes back, he can't believe to see Jango Fett back from the dead. "That's right, boy. I'm back, and now you're standing in my way." Jango throws a bounty puck onto the ground, which doesn't make Boba feel any less betrayed, even if he understands a little bit more now. "Dude, what Jedi sorcery is this? You died." "Not exactly. You see, Townwee had to cover me up with a clone that day on Geonosis for their, how should we put this, business. But if you remember anything of what I taught you, little Boba, the bounty always comes first. No attachments allowed." "Oh, believe me, I've memorized your word on hunting, and I must say that it was pretty good a long time ago. I guess we'll just have to see how fast I eliminate you, boy." With this, Jango draws his Westar 34 blaster with his right hand before grabbing it mid-air with his left, which is by his side, before pulling out the other pistol. He then jabs the two together into Boba's EE3 carbine while shooting, which destroys Boba's rifle. This means that Boba is now forced to fight without his iconic weapon against his father, making him rely on his other weapons and martial arts knowledge, as well as his creativity in battle to beat Jango. After this first blow, however, the bounty hunters leap into battle, with Jango running up the wall with support from his jetpack as Boba uses a grappling hook to propel himself forward. Then they meet in the middle of the dimly lit Kaminoan hallway, with Jango shoving his wrist viro blade into Boba's neck while holding him against the wall, as Jango starts to slowly overpower the younger Fett with his will and strength until Boba headbutts his father and kicks him again across the floor for good measure. And in case you don't remember, the wrist vibroblade is what Jango used to stop himself from falling into the water in Attack of the Clones. So he was basically just using that to try to just really kill him, because he's going at it at this point. I mean, bounty hunting is bounty hunting, so that's the way it is. Then Jango runs behind one of the damaged walls as Boba follows with his flamethrower, melting the wall where he thinks Jango is to ashes. Jango then leaps through the wall using his Mandalorian martial arts knowledge and grabs Boba's flamethrower, trying to shove it into his own face, which leads to Jango turning his own on and pulling both down so that he faces his son as they shoot fire on either side. But then Boba shoots up with his knee rocket dart launchers into the placard of Jango, who stops the flames and falls back towards the stairs, leading to the next level before blocking a kick and flying up with his pack while shooting down at Boba. After landing on the next level, Boba follows and then bends over to shoot his missile in Jango's direction. Startled, Jango tries to dodge out of the way, but it's too late as the rocket-firing missile hits a spot on the wall in front of Jango, which lifts him off his feet and into the hallway behind him, where he lands on his back and his helmet then disconnects from the rest of the suit. Then Boba flies up to him and grabs Jango's own helmet to use as a weapon against him. So as his father stands up, Boba starts pummeling Jango in the face with this piece of equipment, which dazes him, and then Boba uses the folds of Jango's armor to throw him around the hallway. The blue bounty hunter, no, not me, although I must say Jango is a pretty cool guy, I would definitely recommend him for bounty hunting tips, but the older blue bounty hunter gets up and responds to Boba's attack by pulling out his dual blasters and firing them into Boba's green Beskar chestplate and helmet, which pushes Boba back. Then the two start flying around the outer hallway of the facility, which wraps around the whole base and is big enough for aerial combat, which is good as the two bounty hunters start flying around with their jetpacks, occasionally shooting at each other. Jango with his Westars and Boba with his wrist laser that is less effective than his EE3, but still good nonetheless. Then on one time when Boba flies past his father, flying right next to him, Jango grabs Boba's Wookiee braid mid-air and uses it to throw Boba into a wall, which he bounces off of onto the ground below, cracking the glass and breaking some of Boba's ribs, which leaves him weak on the floor, barely managing to crawl onto his side. Then Jango flies down a few meters ahead of Boba and starts to walk forward with his now damaged armor and his pistols pointing straight ahead. "Well, this is it. I just wish I had more time to train with you before it came to this. One thing's for sure, it's too late now."
How right you are.
Then the doors of level 1 burst open, revealing Darth Vader with a whole legion of specialized clone troopers trained under Boba in black and green armor with custom red eyes like Vader's own, standing behind him and that hold their guns at the ready. Boba then steps back as he is confident the army will soon take out their enemy.
Shoot them. Shoot them both.
Huh? Then all of the clones open fire on the two men as Boba takes the bulk of the hits with his Beskar armor, and Jango was hit a time or two in the side, but then an Old Republic gunship with blue and silver Jag eyes on it crashes straight through the roof in between the bounty hunters and Vader's forces, allowing them to take cover as bullets rain against the hull, but then also multiple legions of Phase 1 clone troopers charge over the railing opposite of Vader's legion, with many Alpha class ARC troopers being among them, that Jango himself of course trained during the Clone Wars. And as the battle ensues in the massive area, hundreds of clones spill over the obstacles, meeting in the middle for this battle. However, when Jango looks over his shoulder again, Darth Vader is suddenly gone, making him wonder where the Sith could have gone to. But then, Jango and Boba fly over to the nearby platform, where even though they had to work together to survive right there, Jango still needs his credits and goes to shoot Boba, but Boba is quicker and shoots Jango off the platform into the water below, before barely making his way into the Slave One, still weak from his broken ribs. But then, Jango swims and flies out of the water, landing on his own version of the Slave One, which is upside down on the bottom side of the platform, meaning that when he gets in the cockpit, Jango is at first at least sitting upright. Then Jango blasts out of the planet, closely followed by Boba, as the rain particles stream against the cockpit. Once the two ships are fully in space, however, they begin a dogfight, maneuvering about with their excellent piloting skills in full effect as the two circle each other with the blue atmosphere behind them. As Jango flies ahead of Boba and does a corkscrew into the upper atmosphere, Boba Fett follows close behind, firing out with the ship's laser cannons, which mostly miss Jango, who's a skilled pilot, but also do mildly tear up the rear and wings of the ship. Jango responds by stopping complete obliquely, which makes Boba's Slave 1 fly ahead of Jango before he shoots out a homing missile which follows Boba down, but Boba outmaneuvers this bad boy, making it explode by releasing a previous bounty frozen in carbonite from the inside of the ship, which collides with the missile, detonating it. And yeah, Boba is apparently that stone cold that he will literally just release a captive in carbonite into space to blow up a missile behind him, so that's pretty cool, I guess. And then as the two are flying straight up again with Jango beneath Boba, he tries to get his targeting systems to lock onto Boba, but then after a light blinks on the back of Boba's Slave 1, another small ship is released from the bay, Imperial by the looks of it, which folds out its wings, revealing an advanced TIE fighter driven by no other than Darth Vader himself. And it turns out Boba was double, maybe even triple crossing Jango by now, and Boba had worked with Darth Vader to make his father think that he was on his side, when in fact the whole time they were just luring out Jango, who they knew to be somewhere in the facility when researching the Kaminoan records. But there's no time to say thank you about this to his son, as Vader's craft comes barreling down from above. Jango could for a short while outmaneuver the advanced TIE, but would soon be blown to pieces by Vader, with Jango dying officially this time. Then Boba and Vader would return to Kamino, where Vader force chokes most of the enemy legions at once before discarding their bodies in the water. But anyway, that's it for this video. You can subscribe if you want to. I upload every Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I also post shorts on Saturday. But yeah, see ya. So we all remember when Yoda and Obi-Wan went into hiding, and if you were going to vacation in the galaxy, where would you want to go? A beach planet like Scarif, right? Well, no. Yoda of course chose the swamp planet, which meant he was well hidden for many years, but what if his greatest fear came true and the Sith somehow tracked him down to his doorstep? Today in this video, we'll explore how Vader would plan to take down the Jedi, the subsequent lightsaber fight, and also how the galaxy would be affected from the loss of Yoda. In the small hut in the middle of the swamp rises the little green man, who awakes to the sound of faint crickets outside his window. Yoda has just taken a mid-afternoon nap, and as the fire burns in the oven below a warm stew, Yoda feels at peace. But this moment of joy is cut off when he looks up and sees a shadow blocking the light from his fire cast on the wall. A terrifying figure with a skull-like face and dark robes is standing nearby. Yoda has seen this monster only in his dreams and knows it to be no other than Darth Vader. But then, the whole hut around the Jedi is obliterated as Vader creates a massive force wave. Yoda dodges the debris and then moves back into a different room, igniting a green lightsaber before Vader powers in like a dark ox and turns on his own sword before pushing Yoda back while spinning the lightsaber around him. As they move their way into a narrow hallway of the abode, their lightsabers cut into the walls all around them, similar to another fight Vader fought in. But next, after Vader tries to force choke Yoda outside in the swamping area, Yoda reverses this effect back to Vader through the Force, causing the Sith Lord to drop to his knees as his helmet and breathing apparatus are crushed around his head. Then Yoda force lifts the escape pod he used years ago to arrive at the planet and drops it on top of the Sith, apparently crushing him into the ground. Yoda then flees into the woods as he hears the distant sounds of TIE fighters and walkers. The small Jedi rushes from branch to branch like a Kowakian monkey lizard and flips over logs and streams, creating as much distance as possible from the Empire, while also shielding his presence with the Force. Meanwhile, Vader pushes the pod off of himself and stands up with a damaged breathing sound before an Imperial officer runs up to where Vader stands.
Lord Vader, are you alright? Your mask, it's damaged.
Yes. Now is not the time for complaining though, Admiral. First we must plan on the Jedi's defeat. Now that I have him on the run, we will surround him with a wave of infantry before then also deploying waves of our elite forces to wear him down and to box him down even more.
I'll send for our troops right away.
That's not all, Admiral. After this, I will personally drive Yoda into the dark side cave of the swamp, where my abilities will be heightened, and I will surely defeat him. And next time, for your sake, do not interrupt me, Admiral.
Yoda stops in a clearing miles away from his home. He's been running for over an hour, but while looking down, a huge shadow is cast over Yoda, enfolding the entire area in darkness. Yoda looks up to see a massive Star Destroyer above him, and this is one of hundreds of the vessels now surrounding the planet.
The dirt of the galaxy this is, controlling and suffocating planets without any respect for the wildlife. A way of intelligence. This is not.
But then, Yoda hears the crack of a twig nearby and senses danger. Hundreds of stormtroopers start to encircle Yoda, cautiously stepping in from all sides. Yoda looks one way, then another, as his hand hovers over his hilt at his side. Yoda is now grateful that he recovered his lightsaber from the Senate floor years ago, but then a stormtrooper gives out the order to open fire. So with no other choice, Yoda flips up with his lightsaber now on and begins in a crazed frenzy, blocking all of the laser bolts shot his way, deflecting half of them into the troopers themselves, sending them flying back with horrific wounds. Even though there are at least 200 troops left, this means nothing to the Jedi as he pulls all of his strength and focus back and dives through multiple stormtroopers with his lightsaber and then deflects shots into some, force pushes others into trees, and ultimately defeats them all, showing off his true power. He still feels his strength waning though, and has no time to process this fight as a hulking AT-AT walker steps into the clearing in front of Yoda. So imagine how big these guys look next to a normal human, and then think about what that would be for Yoda. But where most would give up, the walker cocks its head to shoot Yoda, but he then brings the entire vehicle down with the force, crushing its head underneath the body in an explosion. So, I mean, I guess if Starkiller took a whole Star Destroyer down, this maybe isn't as cool as I was thinking it was in the script, but hey, it's still something, I guess. Luke wouldn't be doing this on Hoth, that's for sure. But with no time to recover, Yoda turns around to the sight of a wave of death troopers marching in from all sides. Knowing he stands no match in his drained state against them, Yoda pulls a speeder bike out of the walker wreckage and flees as bolts hit trees all around him. Then even the powerful mentality of Yoda isn't enough to stop the panic felt when Darth Vader's own TIE fighter lowers from the air right above him, chasing Yoda through the swamp as he rides his speeder. Vader shoots at Yoda, scarring the ground around him until one bolt directly hits the back of his bike, sending the speeder careening into a ditch as Yoda flies into some cave. Standing up though, Yoda takes in his surroundings, realizing he is in fact doomed.
Sense something different here, Master?
Light or dark, I am one with the Force, and with me it is.
Was it with you when my probe droids found your location and we've readied thousands of personnel to come here to destroy you? Or perhaps when my master left you running at Coruscant before recent years?
Perfect life is not, but strong are those who fight for tomorrow. Foolish is the one who is obsessed with the shape of now.
Don't count on a future for long, Master Jedi.
Yoda walks backwards into a passageway of tall, black obsidian rock with vines hanging around him, and Vader edges forward with his blade cutting through the ground behind him, leaving a trail of scarring along the cave floor. Yoda raises his weapon and stops his retreat. The two just stand there in fighting position as the cave is completely quiet, leaving nothing but the hum of the lightsabers they have raised. Vader jabs forward, hitting Yoda's blade, barely budging him, and then Yoda jabs down, up, and brings Vader's saber into the wall next to Vader, blinding him for a moment. But Vader is one with the strong dark side of the cave.
I need not my eyes.
Then he begins sending his own strikes at Yoda, who parries most of them, but is occasionally dazed by the powerful hit, pushing him back little by little. Yoda leaps up and grips a ledge with his feet, and then flips over Vader, slashing his armor. Then Vader does a parry before lunging, and the two exchange a riposte before then assuming starting positions. Sensing he's losing, Yoda lifts Vader into the ceiling, which cracks the obsidian and damages Vader's suit even more. But then after landing, Vader force pushes Yoda hard across the hallway into one of the black walls, which knocks Yoda out unconscious. Then with this plan successful, Vader would throw Yoda over his shoulder before leaping out of the cave and then ordering impenetrable shackles for Yoda to be built, where they can hold him for questioning later. This is built in Yoda's old swamp nearby, where a nice view of his decimated house is there. For days and days, Vader and the Imperials would try everything they can to crack Yoda and get information out of him regarding the separate surviving Jedi, but nothing works. At first, Vader tries something similar to his grandson Kylo Ren, and he tries by probing deep into his mind to steal information, but Yoda's force shield is far too powerful. Then they try interrogator droids laced with the most poisonous substances to make Yoda expose the truth. But this is in vain as well. But then, on day 4, Lord Vader walks up to Yoda to try out a new strategy. He force pushes Yoda's head into his shackles, causing a bonk on the head.
Necessary that was not.
Then a Lambda shuttle lands behind Vader, with the door pushing thick smoke out of the way as Palpatine walks forward, lifting his robes from the dirty water where he walks.
My master, please bless me with your abilities today to crack Yoda's mind.
Oh, there are many methods that are good for using now. One I will display shortly. Any last words, Yoda?
See the future too, I do. Overthrown by your successors you shall be. Chaos your empire will cause.
Yes, and Lord Vader will grow his legs back. Now let's get on with the ceremony. Sidious then uses an ancient Sith ability which allows him to relive Yoda's footsteps through his mind. He goes back to right after their duel at the Senate building, where he finds a memory of Padme giving birth before he then sees Bail Organa leave in a shuttle with a baby. And then in the memory, Yoda turns to face Obi-Wan, so Palpatine then swims over to Obi-Wan, where he now looks through his eyes, and this takes him to Obi-Wan's Jedi Interceptor, where he gets in and flies towards some desert planet. Then Palpatine exits Obi-Wan's memories, before then also exiting Yoda's memories, bringing him back to Dagobah. The children of Anakin Skywalker are on Alderaan and Tatooine.
So I assume the usual. You take one, I take one.
We all know how that went last time, and this time let's see how working together sounds. However, before their departure, the Emperor electrocutes Yoda with Force Lightning, except this time he doesn't hold it back at all, and there's also no reactor shaft for him to be thrown into, leading to the Green Jedi's death finally. And despite his pain, Yoda is still able to ascend into the Force, fading away. Then, for good measure, orbital bombardment begins across the destroyers above Dagobah, and after the Imperial forces leave, of course, leading to the planet being turned into more of a fire planet than anything. Vader and Palpatine travel to Alderaan in their Lambda shuttle, accompanied by 10 TIE Reapers with Death Troopers, and also Palpatine's Royal Guard aboard. They drop down at the foot of the Royal Palace before the Death Troopers take out the ground defenses. Then with stealthy precision, the Royal Guard break into the upper levels of the building before slaughtering the defenses there. As Breya escapes the throne room with a 4-year-old Leia in her hands, Bail stays behind to defend their escape with a blaster, but the elite warriors enter and 2 are shot down by Bail, but then another one cuts through his arm holding the blaster, before a 4th slashes down into his back, knocking Organa down. Then as Breya runs up to the door of the room and turns around, one of the red guards throws his javelin at her, which spears her against the wall. Then she drops Leia out of her hands, who is the last minute caught by Palpatine as he walks into the room. Then the two have a Star Destroyer turn the palace to rubble before making their way over to their next destination, which is Tatooine. For the Emperor's grand plan on the desert planet, he dresses up in the Jedi robes of someone like Kenobi, and then with his hood up, makes his way into the Lars homestead, where it is noon, and they are preparing lunch. A bright day for now, but this won't last, as Palps makes his way through the door, engaging a Force mind trick to make the Lars believe in his deceit. "Hello. I'd like to see Luke. I have something important to give him." "We don't want you here, Obi-Wan. You gave us Luke for our own judgment, and I know you'll respect that." "It'll only be a minute, I promise. What could go wrong? Besides, Luke isn't around here anyway. He's downstairs building..." At this moment, little Luke walks in, but Owen stops him, putting a hand in front of his shoulder. "Now, wait a minute. What's this all about anyway?" Then Palpatine force pushes the two into opposite sides of the room, raising Owen off his feet and then paralyzing him as his spine cracks against a sandstone column. Then he pulls out two red lightsabers and also takes care of Beru, but as all of this is going down, Obi-Wan would sense the dark presence nearby and then rushes over to where Luke was to be. As he walks through the door, he's met with the disfigured Emperor in his own cloak, but as Obi-Wan starts his command to leave the planet, another lightsaber turns on behind him, and as Obi-Wan slowly turns around, he sees a massive Sith with dark armor and a red lightsaber bleeding into the passageway. Then Sidious and Vader both begin fighting with Kenobi, who is a challenge at first, but as Obi-Wan has more or less cut himself off from the Force, it is not long before the Sith Master and Apprentice overpower Obi-Wan and then cut him down as well. But Obi-Wan, again cut off from the Force, doesn't drift into a Force ghost, which is a shocking feeling for Vader, seeing his master broken and now truly defeated after all these years later. Then the two Dark Lords exit the property with now two Force-sensitive children, and Vader orders the Sand Troopers serving with them to burn the house down, before also doing a search for Obi-Wan's home, which leads to also the recovery of Anakin's lightsaber. With the two major Jedi threats eliminated, the Empire would become even more strong, and especially after the losses of Luke and Leia, who remember are some of the leading figures of the rebellion in the original timeline, and without them this means no blowing up the first Death Star or blowing up the second Death Star for that matter. Han would actually become, through chance, one of the leading figures of the Rebel Alliance, and would lead a Wookiee rebellion on Kashyyyk, as well as multiple revolts at Corellia and even Cloud City. However, these victories were cut short by a young Sith that would find and eliminate the threat. Going back to right after Tatooine, however, Vader will basically replace the Inquisitors as a task force, and then Luke and Leia would over the next few decades grow up to be trained by Vader, and he would give Leia Anakin's hilt, and then Luke the fallen sword of Obi-Wan Kenobi. The lightsabers are of course blue, and for Luke green at first, but then would later on be bled in a Sith trial, leading to Luke with one red blade, and Leia with two light whips instead. So it seems the Empire would be doing pretty good, right? And Vader and his kids would get to be together, just not in the way you may have hoped. But worry not, because this all comes to a halt when Vader does more research and realizes that Padme would have actually still been alive when he was entombed in his suit for the first time. So during this year, that being 2 BBY, Darth Vader would confront Palpatine in his own throne room, surrounded by Sith books of knowledge. But as he walks up to the throne, he is betrayed by his twins, who burst in through gaps in the bookshelves and then leap down as Leia wraps her light whips around Vader, tying him down, before Luke then steps forward and stabs his father through the chest, killing him. Later the two would also overthrow Sidious and start their own empire, but that's of course
a good question for another time.
Now, while that's the end of the story for the most part, it's also important to note that another alternate scenario would have been when Vader was trying to interrogate Yoda. He could have just faded into the Force instead of just dying, resulting in no capture of the twins. Hopefully this was a good alternate scenario. I hope it wasn't too
generic, but I kind of wanted to do something more original trilogy related. And sorry to my subscribers if the audio sounds a little bit different in this video. I'm kind of changing my setup around a little bit as we prepare for doing a face reveal in the next few months. So come on guys, we just got to get to 10k subs and then that'll be happening.
So I actually forgot to record the outro earlier, so here it is while editing the video. Anyway, that's it for this video. You can subscribe if you want to. I upload every Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I also post shorts on Saturday. But yeah, see ya.
The Battle of Kamino was meant to be a major turning point in the war, but after the Jedi foiled Grievous's plans once again, let's just say I don't think he got a promotion. But what if instead the droids pushed through, overtaking Tapaco City and halting clone production entirely? In this video, I'll explore how in this alternate timeline this battle would be won, how the Sith would work alongside Thrawn who would join them, and if the lack of clones would be able to keep up the galaxy for long. So how would they even win the battle? Well, in the original event, Anakin and Obi-Wan intercepted a transmission between Ventress and Grievous discussing the planned battle at hand. So in this version, let's just say that all the Jedi never discovered this signal, and that after the success of the commando droids at the Rishi Moon Station the year prior, Ventress would swap out her Aqua droid forces with exclusively commando droids, creating an unstoppable fighting force. As Shaak Ti and Commander Colt oversee the platforms of the training station Clone Home, they receive an alert as a munificent ship among many other munificent ships enter the Kamino space, and a space battle begins overhead, producing loud booms and crashing sounds as debris from the separatist ships dives into the ocean below. But little do the clones realize until far too late that these pieces of debris are actually disguised Trident-class assault craft, which then, under the leading of Ventress, spring into the air, attaching into the city from all angles. So then, hundreds of BX battle droids begin marching into the buildings of the cloners, and then Grievous would break through the meager blockade, adding his own army against the Republic too.
Sergeant, the getting overrun. There are no reinforcements short of. Isn't it? Ah, look out. They're coming in from offside. One last charge for the Republic.
Commandos would break deep into the DNA centers and clone barracks, destroying training ground, scientific discoveries, and more in the process, while leaving the bodies of clones scattered about. Admittedly, the boys did a pretty good job defending their home, fighting to the last breath, but would still be decimated by these overwhelming amounts. About halfway through the battle, Generals Anakin and Obi-Wan would arrive with their Venators at Kamino to assist in the battle, but would for the most part be too late, as 90% of the defenders at this point were killed, and then after landing, most of their Venators were shot down too, crashing into Tapaco City and creating even more destruction. However, Anakin would also be captured by Ventress after trying to duel her amidst the overwhelming odds, and Obi-Wan would actually be shot down alongside Rex and Cody when they made a last stand at one of the suspended bridges that connected multiple buildings when some super battle droids advanced on them from all sides. With the leadership mostly defeated, the last clones were hunted out and killed in the lower levels of the city. And you know what that sounds like, another Star Wars horror game idea, since I randomly have a bunch of those ever since I did that Liminal Spaces video. But anyway, Ventress acquired some of the sample DNA of the clones before the entire facility was plunged into the water. With this, the Republic was forced to rely on the clones that already were in use around the galaxy, as well as some secret Kaminoan sites located on some medical stations, and also Coruscant, which produced only a quarter of the amount of troops that were originally existing in the remainder of the Clone Wars. Anyway, Grievous and Ventress would double their efforts, with Grievous
thus conquering much of the core worlds, while Ventress split off and massacred the Outer Rim. As the Republic was pushed back more and more, they stopped having opportunities to fight battles in the Outer Rim, like at Umbara, where Republic forces led by Aayla Secura were crushed, resulting in another clone legion being obliterated. But then by 20 BBY, two hugely important events would happen. One was a mission led by Mace Windu, where he attempted to save Anakin from Sereno, where he was captured, but while this was happening, Count Dooku himself led a battle to retake Ryloth, in which he struck deals with local politicians like Orn Free Taa, who added their own resistance, and then Tyrannus would bring 3 Providence-class dreadnoughts in, where he would quickly win the space battle, and then lead a ground offense where he would use his lightsaber to cut through clones and also Twi'lek patriots, leading to a last stand from Cham Syndulla.
Count Dooku, I knew I sensed a foul presence here. No, not Ryloth is not some pampered core world that will just sit back and let you invade us.
Actually, I think that's exactly what you'll do.
Well, no, we've dealt with you seppies once, and we'll deal with you again.
My dear Cham, I think you forget I am more than a mere separatist.
But while Dooku was occupied here, Ventress would sense the disturbance of Mace attacking Sereno with the 187th Legion, in which they rig LAAT gunships with hyperdrives developed by desperate Republic scientists that would blast them into the surface past the blockade, where Windu and Pons overtake the personal forces of Dooku at his palace, made up of primarily Magna Guards. Then after fighting through them, Mace walks up to Skywalker's cell, stepping over the sizzled droids, while Commander Pons covers for him. Mace opens the cell door as the lights turn on around him, and in there is Anakin in some sort of black metal armor with now a buzz cut. However, while this is happening, Asajj Ventress breaks through the glass with her 2 lightsabers before force pushing the glass shards into Pons, killing him and sending the clone flying out over the balcony. Then Mace releases Skywalker, who lands on his knee with a thud. The Lost Jedi slowly gets up, looking at both Mace and then Ventress, but Skywalker yells out with a forced scream, crumbling the walls around him and then ripping the rest of the palace above them off into the cliff below. He starts to breathe heavy in rage and brings his arms in towards himself as if to reach out with the Force. Wait, Anakin, don't do this. Don't forget that it was they who took your life. They who killed Obi-Wan. I've been tortured, imprisoned, and buried here, but yes, you're right, Master. It is their fault. Come on, Skywalker, let's get out of here as friends, just like old times.
So be it.
So then Skywalker channels this force into a push at Ventress, which sends her barreling into a column surrounded by rubble. Then she orders hundreds of battle droids to march onto their level, where Mace and Anakin, 2 of the most powerful Jedi in the galaxy at this point, mow through them with ease. Then while they are occupied with this, Ventress would pull out her holo projector and contact Dooku, saying that the Jedi prisoner is escaping.
My lord, while you've been occupied on Ryloth, the Jedi kept Skywalker.
Yes, Ventress, I know. You see, this was in fact a test to see if I could rely on you. A test to see if you're ready to ascend with us to the next era of galactic history. A test that you failed.
Dooku was in fact waiting above in space aboard one of his dreadnoughts with Grievous.
Corporal, ready the weapon. Set target for my palace.
But Count, won't that kill Ventress?
Yes, a small price to pay for the deaths of Skywalker and Windu, and also karma for her own failure.
Then, the ship, specifically fitted with an early design of the Death Star laser being constructed by the Geonosians under Dooku's command, would be primed before firing into the planet, destroying an area large enough to evaporate the forest with Dooku's palace, taking Anakin, Mace Windu, and Ventress with it.
At the same time, the hidden explosives in Palpatine's office would go off, as Dooku had begun to sense his master's deception and had decided at this point to knock him out of the way of the CIS conquest of the galaxy. This takes us to the last year of the war, where the tactical genius Thrawn would actually help Grievous to take over the core worlds as effectively as possible. Thrawn had decided to switch to the CIS side since he saw the tide turning, which made him respect the commanders of the droid army more, that they were able to overthrow a galactic republic. However, as the Jedi do everything that they possibly can to defend, they are driven closer and closer to a final battle on Coruscant. Even with this, in some last-effort attempts, they would secure minor conflicts at planets like Utapau, Kashyyyk, and Megiddo, proving to be some of the last battles of the war. Meanwhile, Grievous relishes at the idea of him leading the offensive into the capital. And I mean, just imagine how much of an ego boost this would be for Grievous. Even if it's probably Thrawn doing all the heavy lifting, literally. Finally, it arrives, the Battle of Coruscant. With it is a massive fleet of separatist ships which enter the system and engage in conflict with the massive Republic defense that contains the majority of the remaining Venators, and the battle proves to be the biggest one of the war yet, as the Republic calls in almost all of their navy to lock with the CIS navy that itself is huge at this point. Also, multiple Jedi generals who are there, like Yoda, Ahsoka, who recently passed her trials at a younger age, and also Kit Fisto defending the surface to the last breath. Almost a parallel to the Kamino conflict years earlier, which wasn't even as intense as this monstrosity. Surprisingly, the two sides would basically destroy each other, causing hundreds of capital ships to break up in the atmosphere, raining debris on the civilians and infantry below. One chunk of a Venator would crash into the left wing of the Senate building, ripping it down, while some engines would land around the Jedi Temple, sending it up in flames. Ultimately, the Jedi generals and remaining clones are pushed onto the last Venator, which starts to leave the system. But Grievous would intercept this ship with multiple landing craft entering through the hangar. Then Grievous would face off against the Jedi at the hangar floor.
Grievous, you may think you've beaten us, but your overconfidence will once again be your downfall. Fight us if you dare.
Master Jedi, it would be rude of me not to introduce my friends, bred from the stolen DNA of Kamino.
No.
Yes, Fisto, meet your doom.
At this point, the separatist-bred clone troopers developed from the stolen DNA on Kamino would exit the landing craft with black Phase 2 armor and unique visors too, with Grievous's Legion having green markings across their armor and making him proud to finally have better warriors at his hands than the droids he always felt humiliated by. They march up past the droid general and then begin firing at the Jedi from all sides. While having a different training and therefore different fighting style, the clones still were just as effective as those of the Republic and were able to knock down all of the low-level Jedi with ease before Yoda in a fighting frenzy would fight back and put up a good fight alongside Kit Fisto and young Ahsoka. As the last of the Jedi are being dealt with by his clones, Grievous speaks into his comlink connected to Darth Tyrannus. You see, when Dooku assassinated Palpatine months earlier, he discovered also that Sidious had a secret plot to destroy the Jedi and unveiled Order 66 when researching the clone DNA that was taken from Kamino. So Dooku now gives the command, and all the remaining Jedi around the galaxy, including Utapau, are shot down by the clones under the command of Dooku. This also means the Jedi who were starting to fight back against the CIS-trained clones are now overwhelmed when the normal clones join in to butcher the Masters. This means that Yoda, Ahsoka, and Kit, along with the others, are killed, ending the Clone Wars. What happens after this, you ask? Well, something probably. Okay, well, that would be too abrupt, but seriously, I don't feel like putting another epilogue on a what if that's just a copy and paste of all the other epilogues, minus a few details. Also, I purposefully made sure to avoid Palps in this episode, as I'm getting kind of tired of doing his voice every what if, even if I am good at it. But anyway, that's it for this video. You can subscribe if you want to. You guys can also join now. Obviously you don't have to, it's completely optional, but that would really help out the channel. And also know that I am doing a face reveal at 10,000 subscribers, so make sure to stick around for that. But yeah, I upload every Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I also post shorts on Saturday. But yeah, see ya.
Where did everybody go?
Hey, unlike most what-ifs, this video is interactive. In the end of this video, your fate will be in your own hands. In the split second, Windu felt a touch of heat near his hand and it all became a blur. The heat of the Chancellor's scorching lightning, the pain from his disembodied hand, and the anger within him. The winds of the Coruscant night sky swept his face as he continued falling into oblivion. Although battered and barely conscious, he knew what he had to do. With his remaining strength, he channeled the force within himself, and as the bustling of the streets grew closer, he softened his fall and stumbled, barely sensible of his environment. He continued his staggered search for escape until he reached what seemed to be a nearby shuttle. He made his way to a spaceport and escaped the Empire's grasp. But he knew the Empire would never rest, till he and whoever remained were dead. The Emperor gazed at the construction of the superweapon as his new apprentice Darth Vader stood beside him. Though Sidious allowed himself a brief moment to bask in his victory, a thought began creeping into his head. Though he had won for now, the two leaders of the Jedi Order were still missing and presumably alive. Together, if regrouped, they would be powerful enough to defeat him and Vader, which is why he must destroy the weaker link before it's too late.
The Jedi are scattered and defeated, but we are vulnerable. The two most powerful Jedi are still lurking in the shadows. You have already wounded one. Finish what you began, and you may be powerful enough to defeat Master Yoda.
As you wish, my master.
Windu rested on his makeshift bed as he tried to fall asleep, but he simply couldn't. The ferocity of anger battled with his remaining hope for the galaxy. The bitter taste of defeat had left him shattered and left him with an urge for more power. He had failed the Jedi, and he must redeem himself and destroy the Sith once and for all. But still, he knew there was bound to be survivors. The Jedi were caught off guard by Palpatine's betrayal, but they were resolute, and they could build back with his help. He had to make a choice. Will he build his own power and attempt to become the most powerful Jedi ever, to finally defeat the Sith? Or will he attempt to rebuild a fallen Jedi Order from the ashes of destruction?
For my ally is Force, and a powerful guardian.
Find yourself running how to take life. Desire to dominate, possess, have nothing.
Darth Vader was known as many things: a Sith Lord, the last thing you want to see at the end of a hallway, and even Anakin Skywalker, though don't let him hear you calling him that. Although one side of Vader we don't see explored too much is how Vader ate. Well, who do you think I am, Vader's Order? I ain't gonna explain that. However, long story short, he basically consumed a terrible tasting substance called RepMed Vitapaste, which could only be administered through tubes while in his meditation chamber. But what if Vader had not only ran out of this, but also the chocolate chip cookies Palpatine had promised him for joining the dark side?
This will be a day long remembered.
Our story starts on the Death Star itself, with Vader waking up in his cell before dropping down to do push-ups, and then hop into his TIE Advanced Fighter to do a routine check of the perimeter to check for rebel scum. However, once this flyby was as uneventful as the rest, Vader would decide it would be a good time to land and have his first meal of the day. After taking a seat in his private meditation chamber, the helmet of the Sith was removed as the life support pod closed around him, allowing the mechanical arm to feed the feeding tube into his mouth as the triangular respiratory vent was removed. As he tapped the button to unload his prize, Vader was shocked to feel nothing exiting the tube. His eyes dilated into a vile Sith shade of red and yellow and even orange as fury threatened to overturn him even in this surreal environment of his meditation chamber. Checking every cartridge of the device, he came to the brutal realization that he wouldn't be eating any Vitapaste anytime soon. With an enraged snarl, Vader broke the pod into pieces around him as he emerged and landed on the cold metal surface with a thud. He would then do a thorough search of his quarters, looking for any of his usual snacks he liked to convert into paste for consumption. Fried porg, nowhere to be found. Fried Nuna, nuh-uh. Protein bars for the Sith bulking weight training grind set, think again. After pouting on his master-sized bed, the half-man, half-machine got up and in a rage exited his chambers into the hallway of the battle station. After passing by 2 stormtroopers, Vader would wonder to himself if he could maybe eat them, but would stop himself, realizing he was no cannibal. No, Vader was in fact a Sith. Taking himself to the sacred dark side shrine, only accessible by him, Palpatine, and Gary the Stormtrooper. Okay, scratch that, just him and Palpatine. His worst fears were confirmed. Rather than the family-sized plate of dark side chocolate chunk cookies the Emperor usually prepared for him, Vader observed that there was nothing there but crumbs and a note left behind. On it read the following: "Dear my favorite apprentice, I'm cutting back on the Sith cookies because I'm afraid we're going to need a second life support system for you if you keep it up, sweet cheeks." Vader would then throw the plates like a frisbee into a nearby control panel, which would send sparks flying out. Then he would fly his TIE fighter to the Imperial Palace on Coruscant. Without warning, Vader walks up to Palps and slaps him across his ugly little face, so hard it knocks him out, sending the Emperor sprawling across the floor. Then he would chain Darth Sidious to the back of his TIE Advanced Fighter, and Vader would fly him through space to the location of the Death Star. However, don't worry, he does also have a helmet on so that he doesn't suffocate. He would then rotate the ship around so that the rear is facing the battle station, and Vader would force Palpatine to observe his greatest creation, soon to be consumed within his belly. The Emperor would start laughing at Vader, claiming that only a Sith as powerful as Darth Nihilus would be able to achieve such a feat. However, this would give Vader an idea. Channeling his inner genius, not Grievous genius, he would force Palpatine to step on a Lego big enough that it would create a massive wound in the Force, which then Vader would channel the energy of to expand his stomach to interstellar levels. So that means beyond light speed, beyond hyperspace, beyond all of those things, he is truly now of a power of greater importance than anything we've seen in Star Wars up to this point, canon or Legends, which that's the big thing right there, right? Legends. So, after believing in himself, the Dark Lord would pull the massive battle station to him using the Force and would then free himself from his shackles by removing his helmet once and for all, securing his destiny as a Sith, and would then wrap his lower jaw around the circumference of the Death Star, similar to a boa constrictor. After swallowing the Death Star, Palpatine would be left speechless with tears of astonishment streaming down his face. He hadn't witnessed anything this beautiful since those swimming alien squids in the Coruscant Opera Room. Vader, now the size of a large moon, would rotate his bulbous thorax to kick Palpatine like a little soccer ball into a nearby sun. After his master and effectively enslaver had been vaporized in a mist of Sith lightning, Darth Vader would start shoving planets upon planets into his maw, consuming the Imperial capital of Coruscant, followed by his homeworld of Tatooine, where Obi-Wan would share a similar scene to Jyn Erso and Cassian Andor in Rogue One before being drowned by a tsunami of saliva, and then also the Mustafarian world of Mustafar for a spicy finish. However, just as Vader felt satisfied with his performance, he would feel a disturbance in his inhumane stomach. Grand Moff Tarkin, a man who was somehow an even bigger prick than Palpatine, ran down the steps to the control room of the Death Star as fire spewed all over the place around him. As he pulled the big lever denoted as the laser firer, a green spot would start to grow on Vader's lower chest. Before he had much time to react, the now gargantuan Darth Vader would pop like a balloon with thousands of pieces of him raining across the galaxy. So while it cost him his life, Tarkin in the end sacrificed himself for the greater good. So, I don't know about you, but I feel like that was the best video on my channel to date, and it is our first members only video, being our first What If Wednesdays video. So basically how this is going to work is any of you guys can comment under this one, and I will do literally whatever you want to for the next one, and that'll be your specific members only video that only you get to watch. Now, let me know, would it be better if I do these members only or if I actually upload them to the channel normally? Because I don't know, maybe part of the appeal is getting to see what a huge audience would actually think of these rather than just our members. But I also don't want people to just give me an idea and then stop being a member immediately after, because the whole point is, the only reason I'm doing this is that I can be able to continue doing YouTube as an actual job. But I don't know, let me know what the next one I should do is. Perhaps Yoda being a Sith, perhaps it's Darth Maul cutting off Dooku's head and using it as a frisbee. I don't really know. But anyway, that's it for this video. Make sure to check out the merch, as this is the very last week you can actually buy it. That being the hoodie, the beanie, and 2 shirts. If you really want to, I might even lower the price just for this week. But I don't know, let me know if any of you would be interested in that deal. But yeah, see ya. The most hated on moment in all of Revenge of the Sith is when Palpatine killed not only these 2 rando Jedi, but also Kit Fisto in a matter of seconds. But what if these Jedi were successful in bringing him down with 0 casualties? Today we'll look over how this conflict would go down in this scenario, plus what events would transpire because of this. Would the Republic win the Clone Wars and have true peace at last? And would Anakin see the truth that
Chancellor Palpatine is evil!
Or rescue Palpatine, killing all in his path? As Mace and the Jedi walk up to arrest the Chancellor, they are suddenly hit by the gravity of the situation. Kit Fisto, being diplomatic as ever, suggests the idea of battle meditation, so the group concurs and they stop in one of the executive building's hallways to meditate. After they have built up a calm and stoic mindset, the 4 make their way through the ceremonial office area into the private office where he sits before turning around. However, in this alternate timeline, only Mace and Saesee Tiin would be present in the room with the Chancellor.
Master Windu, I must say you're here sooner than expected.
My lord, you're under arrest.
It's treason, then.
He would then spin across the room with a forced scream, landing feet away from the 2 masters. However, Mace, expecting such a dark side attack, would begin channeling the dark side beforehand and would use this energy from the Sith to send a flurry of strikes deflecting all attacks. Even in a matter of seconds, however, Master Ten was already getting exhausted, mainly relying on his companion to take the bulk of the hits. As Sidious gets ready to bring his lightsaber down into the chest of Saesee Tiin, he hears one of the massive vases cracking behind him. Turning his head around, he would then see two more Master Jedi, Agen Kohler and Kit Fisto, leap down from either side. He had been so focused on his fear of Anakin not arriving in time that he had missed the presences of newcomers to the room. Not to mention both of these were respected duelists as well. Without a second of hesitation, however, Palpatine would spin backwards and kick Mace over, engaging with the other three Jedi in lightsaber sparring all at once. However, Agen and Kit had seen his power and were already prepared for such a moment, realizing this as the fight of their lives. They'd managed to hold him off for the 3 seconds Mace was down, which Palpatine somehow managed to fit 3 minutes worth of strikes into. Then Mace would force choke Palpatine and throw him into the hallway before the 4 versus 1 fight would continue. This would end, however, with Mace grabbing the arm of Sidious, similar to what we see in the movie, before Kit and Saesee Tiin would hold him down, allowing Mace to discard the red lightsaber off to the side. But Palpatine wasn't finished yet and would send a volley of force lightning at all 4 masters at the same time. However, this would prove useless. With the combined might of the 4 of them, the lightning would basically be deflected back at Palpatine, who is forced to release his deadly attack and then collapse back onto the wall, where the 4 blades, 1 blue, 2 green, and 1 of course being purple, would be placed up to his throat. Mace Windu would also force pull the lightsaber of Palpatine to him, stuffing it in his pocket. Now if Anakin walked in on this sight, it would surely be even more shocking and would see the Jedi truly taking over. However, it would appear Anakin got stuck in traffic on the way there, leading to Palpatine being placed in stun cuffs and also led out of the room into the outside area, where more Jedi have just arrived at the request of Windu, and the security in the building is informed of the situation as well. When Anakin would finally arrive, he is informed of Palpatine being held in custody and that there shall be a trial at the Galactic Senate Court Chamber tomorrow. Mace has a word with the young Skywalker and he offers to make him Jedi Master before they meditate together, and Anakin confides with the man he has had a grudge with for years about how he has felt emotionally conflicted as of recently, and explains how well he's known Palpatine as a friend over the years. Windu explains the Chancellor had been grooming him and that Anakin had finally started down a path Windu felt good about for their future. Also, just so you know, we have a new spring drop of merch with 3 new hats with a smaller and more clean design where the logo isn't quite as big in the frame, and also you get Graduation by Kanye West, that album cover, but instead of Kanye, it is of course Watto, which is a pretty cool design in my opinion at least. If you really want to help out the channel, please consider joining, as that would really help me out. But yeah, enjoy. In this recording, it showed the scene from last night with Mace Windu force choking Palpatine before throwing him into the hallway, leading to the 4 Jedi rushing after him with their lightsabers ignited, pointing at his throat.
Accuses me of being a Sith, and yet he is the one using Sith powers. It's clear this is a coup by the Jedi to take control of the Republic for themselves. We've seen them go from peacekeepers to greedy warlords over the span of this clone war. It was all leading to this, they knew about it. Right back to Master Jedi Obi-Wan Kenobi discovering a mysterious clone army on Kamino.
This sends the groups into disarray, with Jedi like Mace, Obi-Wan, and Aayla Secura getting up from their seats in shock. These masters had been pulled from their respective battles across the Clone Wars to attend this urgent trial, so that's why they are here. Anakin himself would be majorly conflicted by this news, especially the accusation of his master, leading him to the decision between Obi-Wan or the Chancellor. And even Ahsoka was at this meeting, starting to make her way over to her old master. But then, while Mace Windu and Agen Kohler would be standing off to the side in disbelief, Mace would turn around to say something to Kohler, but the lightsaber of Palpatine, still in Mace Windu's pocket, would ignite and cut through the stomach of Agen Kohler. Agen has actually been about to point out Palpatine behind Mace, who had just looked in their direction with a smirk and Sith eyes, but now it was far too late, as with his hand outstretched forward, Master Kolar would fall backwards off of the platform into the deep chamber below. To the audience though, this would look like Mace had just stabbed another Jedi who was reaching out in betrayal to an old friend. At this, Anakin would without hesitation run up and cut Mace Windu down. So that's it for this what if. I actually took some of the part about Palpatine getting mad about the Jedi accusing him of his sort of religion. I kind of took that from the Revenge of the Sith novelization, as I read something about that the other day where he had a more extended dialogue with them when they first walk in. Let me know if you thought this was an interesting what if, but it did actually come from a comment by Detroit Man, so thank you very much for that, Detroit Man. And yeah, if you have a suggestion for a video, I'd be glad to do it at some point or another if I can fit it into the whole roster of videos coming out, because trust me, I have a lot of big stuff planned for the next few months. Anyway, consider subscribing if you enjoyed the video and if I earned your trust. I upload videos every Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I also post shorts on Saturdays and Sunday as well. But yeah, see ya. What if during the duel on Naboo, instead of Obi-Wan's legendary defeat of Darth Maul by chopping him in half, Darth Maul had killed Obi-Wan by a similar move? How would the end of this duel play out? Who would train Anakin now that both Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are dead? And would Darth Maul remain Palpatine's apprentice into the Clone Wars? Find out the answers to all of these questions and more on episode 1 of DBBH What Ifs Season 3. Qui-Gon Jinn, Guardian of the Light, has fallen to the blade of Darth Maul. As Obi-Wan looks on with horror, he lets out a yell of distress. The master who has trained him since the age of 13, who had always been there for him, always given him guidance when no one else could, was dead, lying face up on the steel floor of the plasma refinery. Meanwhile, Maul, who had just killed the older Jedi, felt excitement and actually fueled off of his killing of the Jedi Master. In his mind, he went through the ways he could most quickly end the life of the Padawan Kenobi who stood before him now. But then he realized, why end him quickly when I could savor the moment? Fixating on this thought, he allowed a slight smile to appear on his face. Obi-Wan began to hop up and down as the anxiety and anger continued to consume him. As the laser gate turned off in front of him, he sprinted forward, beginning a quick sequence of strikes with his lightsaber against the Sith Lord's own double-bladed lightsaber. However, after cutting his weapon in half, Obi-Wan went in for a blade lock close to the Sith, leaving himself open to a devastating attack. Darth Maul force-pushed Obi-Wan, causing him to fly over the edge of the platform into the melting pit. Obi-Wan barely managed to save his life by hanging on to a small power node. Then Darth Maul started relishing the moment and taunting Obi-Wan by cutting into the platform above his head with his lightsaber. But then Maul stopped himself. This show of victory was achieving him nothing, and it was time to end this mission. However, he noticed a disturbance in the Force, and the Padawan Kenobi started looking at the lightsaber of his master Qui-Gon. Thinking fast with his newfound focus, Maul stomped down on the lightsaber hilt as it rushed towards the mouth of the pit. Obi-Wan flipped up with accelerated speed, expecting to find a green lightsaber in his hand to strike down his enemy, but no such feeling would come. Instead, the red blade of Darth Maul would cut through his torso, leaving Obi-Wan in two pieces on the floor behind Maul. The Sith would quickly escape the Theed Palace, sensing a turn of events in the name of the local Naboo people, and as he left in his Sith scimitar, he would contact his master Darth Sidious via hologram. Sidious felt concerned at this turn of events, but ensured the Dathomirian that he had done well. The Republic would arrive and honor the lives of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan with a funeral, but Anakin would be refused by the Order as a Jedi apprentice, as without Qui-Gon's dying wish being revealed, the Jedi would still deem him too dangerous to be trained. However, there was one person that was fit to train Anakin, and his name is Dooku. You see, Palpatine's new plan to groom Anakin into his future apprentice was not to have the inexperienced and jealous Obi-Wan train him, but rather the power-hungry, disillusioned Dooku who could teach Anakin many things about the subtleties of Force powers and lightsaber dueling, while also showing him why the Jedi Order is corrupt and must be eradicated. There's just one small problem. Darth Maul is still Sidious's apprentice, so while Maul remains, Dooku and eventually Anakin cannot become true Sith. But no worries, this problem is solved by skipping 10 years ahead to 22 BBY at the height of the Separatist crisis. Sidious hires Maul to assassinate Padme Amidala, a senator who has been opposing the ideas of going to war and creating an army for the Republic, both of which are critical to Palpatine's plan to destroy the Jedi. Landing on Coruscant, Maul sneaks into her apartment at night, and the Jedi Master Luminara Unduli has been chosen to protect the senator after Maul's last bombing attempt was unsuccessful. After quickly dealing with Luminara after a surprise attack, Maul would sneak into Padme's room.
This is outrageous. It's unfair.
And end her life with a Force choke. But upon exiting the room into the seating area, he would find not only Count Dooku, but also Anakin Skywalker waiting there, both with lightsabers at the ready. After dropping Padme's body to the ground, Anakin would ignite his red-bladed lightsaber. The girl he had loved since he was a young boy was now dead, and the one who had killed the two Jedi that saved his life had been the one to do it. Dooku actually stepped aside and allowed for Anakin, who was no older than 19, to fight Maul alone. Anakin would start fighting in a furious, sporadic form against Maul, which surprised him. In between strikes, Anakin would make use of Force Lightning, which Dooku had taught to him. Despite pushing Maul back and tiring him greatly, Darth Maul was starting to gain the advantage by throwing objects throughout the room at the young man. Dooku would then leap into the fray, igniting his own lightsaber. With their combined skill, the two quickly pushed back Maul towards one of the windows, and Maul began to fear whether he would make it out alive. But this question would quickly be answered when Anakin stunned Maul with a hit to the face and then stabbed him through the chest. Maul would look down in shock before being kicked out of the window by Anakin, plunging hundreds of feet to the streets below. Count Dooku would quickly take over the Separatist operation with Anakin as his personal aide, and after the breakout of the Clone Wars at Serenno in 1 month, because in this timeline the Jedi would track Dooku to Serenno, discover a Separatist council meeting, and engage in battle there. The war wouldn't be much different than the original Clone Wars we all know very well. But without Anakin or Obi-Wan as Jedi generals, more planets would be occupied by the CIS, and the clone forces would be spread more thin. However, without the voice of Padme Amidala in the Senate, more funding would be put towards the war effort, which would balance this out. But real quick, here's the Christian advice of this video. If you want to get back to the story, then you can skip to this time right here. Now today I wanted to kind of talk about how when you are thinking about your faith in God, it should not be just, I follow all of these rules, I'm faithful to God just so that I can get into heaven, just so that I can have blessings and that I can have a prosperous life, because God is not a vending machine, you know, it's not faith in and then blessings out. You have to understand that you're not really fighting for freedom, you already are free just by having faith in God. Any acts that you do, any works that you do, anything you do to move away from evil and move closer to God should be done in the name of simply honoring the Lord for saving your life. Now this is something I've been a little bit confused about recently, and you can look at the prodigal son or stories like that where it kind of reveals that there is more to it than that, even if that is hard to understand. But getting back to the video, just a quick reminder that you can leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, because it does really help us out. And yeah, let's get back to the what if. In 19 BBY, the Chancellor of the Republic would be captured by General Grievous and brought aboard the Invisible Hand flagship, causing a massive battle to break out above the surface of the planet. Jedi Masters Plo Koon and Stas Ali would lead the rescue mission to save Palpatine, coming face to face with the Sith Dooku and his apprentice Anakin. However, there is a twist. Palpatine has spoken to Anakin privately about killing his master and taking his spot as the second Sith Lord in the Rule of Two. All Anakin has known at this point is death and a fight for power, so he agrees. When engaging the Jedi, Plo Koon would be spared for later in the plan. After Stas Ali was killed, Anakin would turn to his own master Count Dooku and overpower him in seconds. After this, with Anakin as his new apprentice, Sidious would declare his new Sith name Darth Vader, and the two would perform a spell on Plo Koon by joining their minds and power together to create an immensely powerful mind trick that makes Master Plo believe he defeated Anakin and is bringing him back as a prisoner to the Republic. After arriving on the planet's surface, Sidious would personally go to the Republic Judiciary Central Detention Center to release Lord Vader. He would command Vader to go to the Jedi Temple and wipe out the Jedi with the 501st Clone Legion, while Palpatine himself would enact Order 66, purging the many Jedi scattered across the galaxy and the Outer Rim. After eliminating the Jedi, including Yoda himself, who the two would fight in a duel together, an era of galactic oppression would begin for centuries to come under the reign of the Galactic Empire. And this is where we end our story. This is one of those rare alternate scenarios where, despite a major event playing out differently, the end result still turned out much the same. Well, except for the fact that Luke and Leia never exist, so in theory, the Empire could go on forever. But let me know if you want to see more what-ifs like this one, and just so you know, later this month, I plan on making what if Obi-Wan killed Anakin on Mustafar, and what if the Empire won the Battle of Endor. But if you liked this video, then you might also enjoy this one, where I saw what happened if Palpatine fought the entire Jedi Council, but yeah. See ya. Star Wars what-ifs are known to range from strange to straight up disturbing. Today we will be looking at the 10 most terrifying alternate scenarios that would have completely changed the fate of the galaxy. Starting with scenario 1, what if Yoda turned to the dark side? Despite Yoda never using the dark side in Star Wars, he was already able to 1v1 the Dark Lord of the Sith, but think about it. How terrifying would an evil version of Yoda really be? Well, we actually got to see this in the Clone Wars. For those who have forgotten, in the Clone Wars Season 6, Episode 12, Destiny, we see Yoda fight a dark side version of himself after traveling to one of the wellsprings of the Force, which reveals that he has long since overcome this side of himself. But someone like Yoda, with as much influence as he has over the galaxy, could become a terrible threat if corrupted. After years of having the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders, in our alternate timeline, Yoda snaps about a year into the Clone Wars. Retreating to his private chambers in the Jedi Temple, Yoda uses battle meditation to influence the tide of the war, convinced that the Jedi should be given full control over the galaxy. He would convince Mace Windu and Ki-Adi-Mundi to join his cause, but there is one small problem. Anakin would discover their plot against the Republic. After telling Palpatine, Anakin would join the Chancellor, and after Order 66 wiped out most of the Jedi, a
civil war without end
would start between the Republic and remaining Dark Jedi. And make sure to stick around for some of the wackier what-ifs like Jar Jar being a Sith Lord, or Count Dooku surviving his quote-unquote death. But in the original timeline, the Jedi are wiped out, Yoda fights Sidious before going into exile, and Anakin fights Obi-Wan on Mustafar where he is defeated. But what if Anakin killed Obi-Wan? Well, Obi-Wan would have fallen over before being pushed into the lava by Vader, who is consumed by hatred. But there's more. Vader would contact Sidious before killing him, taking Palpatine's place as Emperor of the Galaxy. Due to his history with clones, Darth Vader would continue the production of the clone army, creating an even stronger empire along with a suit of armor designed not for keeping him alive, but for enabling him to reach his full physical potential. But another Skywalker that almost became the Emperor is Anakin's son, Luke. In Return of the Jedi, we see Luke spare his father after a duel with him, refusing the Emperor's offer to join him, but what if he killed Vader, becoming the Emperor? After chopping off his father's head, similar to Anakin with Count Dooku decades prior, Luke would kneel before the Emperor, and as Sidious went to knight Luke as his new apprentice, Luke would move with a level of force speed far greater than anything Sidious had ever used. Thrusting up with his green lightsaber, Palpatine's hand was cut off before Luke would then grab the Emperor's lightsaber and his own, plunging them into the Sith. Still enraged after Vader threatened to turn his sister to the dark side, Luke would give orders to have his sister retrieved from the forest moon of Endor by a squad of stormtroopers, before then using the Death Star to destroy the Home One, followed by Endor. Just like Anakin before him, Luke would be corrupted to the dark side, with the position of power being far too tempting, and he would vow to change the galaxy into a new order, the way he saw fair. However, our next scenario is one that would have completely changed the course of the saga. What if Anakin was trained by Darth Maul? After killing Qui-Gon Jinn on Naboo, instead of pushing Obi-Wan into the plasma pit when the Padawan went to blade lock with the Sith, he would duck down, stabbing Obi-Wan through the stomach. Obi-Wan has a tendency to die in most of these. It really feels like he is the glue holding together the Star Wars saga. But then again, Anakin would fly back to the Naboo hangar, where Maul would discover him, taking Anakin as his secret apprentice. After years of studying the Sith ways, Maul was convinced that this was the next step in the Rule of Two. After 10 years, Palpatine would start the Clone Wars with a former Jedi, Count Dooku, who was aligned with the Sith leading the Separatists. But Maul would strike with a fully trained Anakin, who was even more powerful than Nightfall Vader in Revenge of the Sith. It turns out Palpatine had taken on a secret apprentice of his own, Dooku. Maul and Anakin would face Sidious and Dooku, with Count Dooku killing Maul, which would make Anakin furious. After killing Dooku, Anakin would attempt to execute Sidious with red Force lightning, but the Sith would manipulate Anakin to become his new apprentice. So despite this timeline being widely different than what we see on screen, the outcome would be much the same. Well, that is assuming Anakin meets Padme and somehow manages to win her over, despite being a Sith Lord and all. And don't worry, we will talk about Dooku more later. Our next what if is much more simple. What if the Imperials shot down the escape pod with C-3PO and R2-D2 in it? The Death Star plans would be destroyed, and with the Rebellion unable to destroy the Death Star, Yavin 4 would eventually be found by the Empire after sending out probe droids. Because in the original, they only found it by tracking Luke, Han, and Leia to the planet. So the Rebellion would be destroyed and Luke would never become a Jedi. However, we all know what you've been waiting for. What if Jar Jar Binks was the Sith Lord? I mean, he just happened to influence all of the events on Naboo and the discovery of Anakin, and also voted to give Palpatine emergency powers. So what if George Lucas went through with his original plans for Jar Jar, supposedly making him an inverse of Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back? The answer is clear. Jar Jar was hidden in the shadows for years as Palpatine took control of the galaxy, and then after Vader killed his master, the Gungan would take off his Royal Guard disguise, killing Vader with his Force lightning and forcing Luke to join him or die. Luke would choose death. So Jar Jar would grant his one wish, killing the Jedi, and using the Death Star to destroy the Rebellion, assuming control of the Galactic Empire. However, let's take it back to Mustafar. While everyone is familiar with the scenario of Anakin killing Obi-Wan, one that many don't know about is what if Anakin turned Obi-Wan to the dark side? Well, after the two confront on Mustafar, Anakin would convince Obi-Wan about the many problems with the Jedi and how the galaxy needed a new order. The two would then confront the Emperor, taking him down from their combined strength, before saving Padme with Anakin's children being raised to one day become powerful Sith. Even stranger is that at one point, Padme was going to try and kill Anakin on Mustafar in Revenge of the Sith, but what if she did, and then Palpatine found a way to use Sith alchemy to transfer the force power of her twins into herself, making her twice as powerful as Anakin? Because when she was pregnant, Padme had 40,000 midichlorians within her, whereas Anakin only had 20,000. Speaking of which, our next what if the twins were born early, takes things in a different direction. Because one of the saddest elements of Revenge of the Sith is that not only did Vader believe he lost his wife, but also his child as well. But it turns out they were alive, in fact both of them, because he never knew he had twins until this moment.
Sister. So, you have a twin sister.
Why does he say sister like that, by the way? I've always found that very strange. But if Luke and Leia were born a week early, Vader would have known they were alive, and would have done everything to find them after the death of Padme. Perhaps Palpatine would have used this fear of loss to manipulate Vader even further. Most likely the Sith would have found them and then raised them to work for the Sith. But if you remember earlier, we talked about Maul killing Obi-Wan on Naboo, leading to Anakin becoming Maul's apprentice. What if Maul defeated Ben Kenobi on Tatooine? Maul would have most likely discovered Luke, abducting him before then training him as an apprentice to defeat his old master as well as Darth Vader. Maul would have revealed the true nature of Luke's parents and what happened to Anakin, which would make Luke despise Obi-Wan and the Jedi. The two would sabotage the Death Star with the help of the bounty hunter IG-88, who does this in Legends by the way, and would start a fracture empire before teaming up with Jabba and Crimson Dawn, leading to the eventual defeat of the Empire. But welcome back to the advice of this video. You may have noticed I sound a little bit tired in this recording, and school just started up, so I've been very slammed with work, so a little bit sleep deprived, a little bit low on energy. But today we're actually looking at Acts 3:8 from the Bible, and if that's not your kind of thing, then you can skip to this time right here. Now Acts 3:8 actually says, "Jumping up, he stood and began to walk, and he entered the temple with them, walking and leaping and praising God." This is the context here is actually a man who was paralyzed in his legs and could not walk at all, and then he is healed by the apostles. And I guess my takeaway from this that I thought was pretty cool is that when God saves you, when you truly have faith in God and God is in your life, there are going to be moments of joy where you will be jumping in joy and be crying tears of joy. These moments await you in your life. I've experienced them myself from having faith in God and letting God into your life. So that's something that is down the road, and you need to keep that in mind, as that is a very exciting thing, and it is promised to all those who believe in God. So yeah, let's get back to the video. But it's the moment you've been waiting for. What if Count Dooku survived? Well, Dooku's head would be recovered by General Grievous, who used the same technology the Sith used on him from the Banking Clan to convert Dooku into a cyborg, with his head still intact and his major organs connected to him through a droid body. Dooku would escape Utapau after the death of Grievous and go on to become a member of the Bomar monks for decades. But with the dark side fueling him, Dooku would convert to a larger suit, similar to that of General Grievous, before fighting Darth Vader on the second Death Star to become Palpatine's apprentice again. However, the Emperor wanted someone young like Luke, so he disposed of Dooku by electrocuting his suit with Force lightning before throwing him into the reactor chamber below. But these are just the 10 most terrifying what-if scenarios from Star Wars. Let me know if I should cover more what-ifs like wholesome, good endings, or anything similar to that. If you like the more cursed side of Star Wars, you may also like these 20 cursed facts I covered in this video, like how R2-D2 has to be decapitated to enter a Naboo starfighter, which you can watch if you click on the screen now.
Do it.